English 400. I'm Alexandra Machida. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the one for whom Dr. Tolles has been recording lectures all semester. I've been able to creepily listen in on your conversations. It's been fun. Now I am recording the opening clip to my Petition project video, and I'm excited. So yes, hello all, and Dr. Tolles. Thank you all for watching this video, I guess. I'm here in the National Portrait Gallery courtyard, which is cool because I'm interning at the National Portrait Gallery Library. That's technically in a different building. It's down the street a little bit, but they're affiliated, so it's okay. And also there's a super cool fountain behind me, and I'm just crazy impressed by it because it's on the ground, and it's cool. Yeah, so this video, the whole thing is basically a conglomeration of clips I've taken throughout DC that relate to Henry James and I talk about when he visited, what he thought of DC and parts of it, and things like that. So I'm excited for you to watch it. I have two corrections to make before we begin. This is Henry James's collected travel writings. In it, he begins the chapter on Washington by saying, "I was twice in Washington." He's lying. According to one of his obsessive biographers, he was here at least 3 times. So, if at any point in the clips, which I have already filmed, which for me are in the past, but for you are in the present because you're about to watch them, if in those clips I say he was here twice only, I'm lying. Don't believe me. Also, he had a friend named John Hay. I pronounce it Hayes at some points. Also lying. Taurus. In any case, so don't believe me if I call him John Hayes as well. That's pretty much all. I had so much fun gathering these clips. I went through torrential rain, gale force winds, the time when there were tornadoes in Virginia a week or so ago. Yeah, I was filming outside for y'all, and for honors credit, but mainly for y'all. Also, I went into a deserted church in a creepy cemetery, and it was, yeah, lots of adventures getting these videos. It's been awesome. I hope you enjoy watching them. Thank you. Henry James met Oscar Wilde, the famous playwright, in Washington, D.C. in January 1882 at a reception. Oscar Wilde was a very big fan of James as a novelist. He had read Portrait of a Lady and loved it. Henry James later paid a visit to Wilde in D.C. Henry James, unfortunately, did not like Oscar Wilde that much. Wilde was very flamboyant, somewhat obnoxious in his attempts at self-promotion. So James later referred to Oscar Wilde as a fatuous cad and declined to see him very much after that visit. They met again less directly in January 1895. Henry James wrote a play called Guy Domville, and it was opening in London January 5th. And the opening night of the play, Henry James was so very nervous that he could not go see the actual performance because he didn't trust himself to be able to stay still the whole time. So he was going to go to a pub to help himself stay calm, but he changed his mind and went to see the performance of An Ideal Husband by Oscar Wilde, just as a way to avoid his own play for opening night. The play by Oscar Wilde made Henry James very nervous because it was a lot different than James's play, and the fact that the audience received that play so well made James nervous that he might not like his play as much. Unfortunately, 5 weeks after its opening, Guy Domville had to be moved from the theater. The managers decided to pick a different play, more likely to hopefully get the audience interested and become very popular. They chose The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde, which is kind of cool because the plays An Ideal Husband and The Importance of Being Earnest played in theaters facing each other across St. James's Square. That just hurts for poor Henry James, of course, and makes me feel somewhat guilty because I went to see An Ideal Husband performed in Washington, D.C. just a few weeks ago. As I've no doubt already stated, Henry James visited Washington, D.C. in both 1882 and 1905. He definitely visited the Capitol building, which you see behind me, in the 1882 visit, likely also in the 1905 one, though I can't verify it, so can't be completely sure. At any rate, when he visited, there would have already been an elevator in the building, as the first one was installed in 1874. Also, the House and Senate offices would have still been mainly located inside, though most of the offices have been moved to other buildings at this point. Also, the Supreme Court still would have been inside the Capitol building, though it is now found across the street. Between 1882 and 1905, the Library of Congress was moved to the Jefferson Building, right there, and you've likely toured it if you've ever been to D.C. Also, between the years of his visits, the Olmsted Terraces would have been completed, and electric lighting and modern plumbing were completely installed in the building. I'm sure everyone in the Capitol appreciates that quite a lot. The main difference between the building as we see it now and Henry James would have seen it is that in 1959 to 1960, they extended the front of the building, which we're looking at right now, and they extended it a little over 30 feet, and it added about 102 rooms to the Capitol building. So it's slightly different, but it still looks essentially the same as it did when Henry James saw it. And in his travel writings, he wrote, "I may as well say at once that I had found myself from the first adoring the Capitol. The Ark of the American Covenant may strike one thus, at any rate, as a compendium of all the national ideals, a museum crammed full, even to overflowing, of all the national terms and standards, weights and measures, and emblems of greatness and glory, and indeed as a builded," his words, not mine, "record of half the collective vibrations of a people." The Library of Congress was established by an act of Congress in 1800 under President John Adams. It was originally housed in the Capitol building, but in 1886, Congress authorized construction of a new building to house the library. The Jefferson Building opened its doors to the public on November 1st, 1897, so James was able to visit the Library of Congress on his second main visit to D.C. He described it as that wondrous Library of Congress which glitters in fresh and almost unmannerly emulation, almost frivolous irrelevance of form, a riot of rare material and rich ornament. When we toured the Library of Congress, our docent actually described for us one of those rare materials. It's found on the ceiling. You look up and see what appears to be silver accenting parts of the ceiling, but it is in reality aluminum foil, because at the time aluminum was still a rather rare commodity. It was pretty new, so it was a sign of how wealthy the nation was that we could afford to put aluminum foil on the ceiling of our new Library of Congress building. This plaque marks the location of the Wormley Hotel. The building here now is the American Bar Association, but when James visited in 1883, the Wormley Hotel is where he stayed. It was only a short visit, wasn't a very big one, but the hotel was owned by James Wormley. He was an African-American man who was born free before the Civil War, and he studied cuisine in Europe, so that likely added to the appeal of the hotel for Henry James, who loved Europe, so no doubt having a European chef made it nice for him. And also, he probably enjoyed the fact that his friends, the Adamses, are located an easy distance down this street. We are currently located in Lafayette Square, directly in front of the White House. It's a bit rainy today, not the best day for filming, but oh well. This is the location that was familiar to Henry James. His friends, the Adamses, and his friend John Hayes lived right down there. He stayed in the Cosmopolitan Club, which was located in this direction, as was the Wormley Hotel, in which he also stayed. And the White House is right there. James was invited there at least once. And James enjoyed the statues in this park. This one behind me of Andrew Jackson, James described in his travel writings. He wrote that the most prodigious of all presidential effigies, Andrew Jackson, as archaic as a Ninevite king, prancing and rocking through the ages. That was his description.
The fruit of the interval, to my actual eyes, hangs nowhere brighter than in the brilliant memorials lately erected to Lafayette and to Rochambeau. Artful, genial, expressive, the tribute of French talent. Everything else gives way for me, I confess, as I again stand before them. Everything yields to this one high luxury of our old friendship with France.
as it continues to rain outside. I'm currently standing in front of the Hay Adams Hotel. It's named after John Hay and Henry Adams. Their homes were originally located right where that hotel is standing. Henry James was good friends with both of them. He met Henry Adams' wife, Marion, also known as Clover, when he was at Cambridge, and he met Henry Adams himself in, pardon me, my paper's a little soggy, it's a tad difficult right now, but he met Henry Adams in 1870. Adams was an acclaimed author and Harvard professor, and he was also a descendant of John and John Quincy Adams, the president. Hay was Lincoln's private secretary during the war and a later ambassador to England under McKinley and Secretary of State under both McKinley and Teddy Roosevelt. James met him in 1875. At that point, Hay was writing for the New York Tribune, and James wanted to know if he could be a correspondent for the Tribune while he was traveling overseas, and the two became friends. The houses were located very convenient distance from the White House, right across Lafayette Square, there's Jackson statue, which is very nice because at one point Henry James visited the White House when he was staying at Henry Adams' house, and we'll talk about that more in just a minute. We are now in front of the White House. I apparently picked a very bad day for filming. The rain, obviously, and if you had been here 10 minutes ago, you would have seen a protest about Libya going on right in front of the White House, so good day for doing this, I suppose. In any case, I will give you a bit of background on Teddy Roosevelt's relationship with Henry James. In 1894, in a pamphlet called What Americanism Means, Roosevelt described Henry James as a miserable little snob, the undersized man of letters who flees his country because he, with his delicate, effeminate sensitiveness, finds the conditions of life on this side of the water crude and raw. In other words, because he finds that he cannot play a man's part among men. Henry James no doubt found that to be rather insulting, and when reviewing a book of Roosevelt's essays in 1898, James said that he did not, quote, either like or trust the new president, a dangerous and ominous jingo, of whom the most hopeful thing to say is that he may be rationalized by the sudden real responsibility of being president. After those words, in 1905, when James was in D.C. staying with his friend Henry Adams, his friend John Hayes invited him to a dinner at his home at which the president and his wife would be present. They went, the dinner went fine, and the next day James had an invitation to an annual reception at the White House. So he walked from Adams's house directly across Lafayette Square, directly past the statue of Jackson, to the White House, went in, sat at a table with the president and his wife at dinner, and they got along just fine, which is rather interesting considering the words that had passed between them. The dinner at Hayes' house and Henry James being at the reception was part of John Hayes trying to sort of get Roosevelt into a more cosmopolitan circle, because the president was not well known for being very refined, as you may know, and it was he hoped to better relations with England by getting Roosevelt to get along well with Henry James. It appears to have gone off very well, and that's the story of Henry James's visit to the White House.